So today is going to be the Ashton Jeanty episode. If you follow me, you've seen me condone trading up for Jeanty. I think I'm not stupid. He's going to go in the top 10. I don't necessarily think he falls to 9, but if he does fall to that range, I would like to trade up to get him. First this year, first next year, to go get him. Now, very few people have supported me in this. That's fine. Not looking for necessarily support. But I do want you to hear me out. And so most people are just saying that's just way too much to give up for a running back. Plain and simple, it's way too much to give up for someone, whether it be because of the amount of production that they have, how short their shelf life is, whatever. There's arguments all under the sun about why you shouldn't go get him. Also, the needs that we have, everything else. Now, the only argument I'm willing to hear is how stacked this class is. That is 100% true. I think there are guys in the second and third round that are going to be available, more so the second, that can absolutely bring production. I've got probably 9 guys, 10 guys that would be above my RB3 last year. That's how good of a class it is. This is an absolutely stacked class at running back. Now, I get that we have holds, but I'll get to that in a second. So here is why I would love the Chargers to trade up for Ashton Jeanty. Number one, he's a star player. Star players don't hit the market. Very, very rarely do they. If they do, it's typically after their prime. Now, Saquon Barkley's towards the end of his prime, was able to hit free agency, and look what he did with the Eagles. I would like to not be I'd count on a franchise being as stupid as the Giants were and letting him walk. I'd prefer to just go get that star player, and I think he's the only player that I've seen coming out of college where I was like, yeah, he's that guy, more so than Jeanty. I loved Bijan. I think Jeanty's the better prospect by not a small margin. Saquon I watched and knew that he was a game wrecker. CMC I watched and knew that he was going to be a game wrecker. Zeke Elliott surprised me. Those are kind of the guys that were taken up in that high of a range. And they produced. They were worthwhile. And that's kind of my biggest argument as to why 2 firsts are worth this player, is because the majority of players taken 22 or later where we're drafting today, and likely next year if we're drafting, we're in a worse spot next year than we are this year, then we've got bigger issues. And so I truly, truly think that he's such a difference maker that it doesn't make any sense to let that type of player pass up, especially with our inability to run the ball and how focused this offensive scheme is on being able to run the ball. How much have we talked about giving Justin Herbert a running game? We'd all love to do it. Now, of course, I do think that there are other players that can do it, and of course you can't have a decent running game with a terrible offensive line and terrible pass receiving core. It can't happen. I just think that there's enough money and enough draft capital that we can still fix that otherwise, especially if you're not giving up anything this year besides the 22 to trade up. Like, yes, you're losing your first next year. We'll get to that in a second. But one argument that's respectable that I've heard is just we have too many holes to fill. Yes and no. So obviously we've all talked about cutting Joey and how much that's going to free up cap space-wise. I think it's kind of an afterthought at this point, like it's going to happen. I would be surprised if we're trying to find out if we can keep Khalil Mack before we finalize that decision. But either way, I think we have the financial situation, the production that we've had this year to go get an edge rusher. One solid edge rusher, whether that be retaining Khalil Mack or you go get one of the guys on the market. Now, are we going to have an absolute top-tier edge room? No. Is it important? Yes. Is having the best edges in the league as important as it was a few years ago? Not as much to me. I think having a well-rounded defensive line is more important. If you have really solid edge rushers and solid to great interior defensive line, then I think you're going to be okay. We've seen what happens when you have excellent edge rushers and a terrible interior defensive line. It doesn't matter, but they're just still going to run the ball all over you. Or they'll stunt their guys to the inside. There's only so you need to be well-rounded for this to take effect. I would prefer to build it out that way. Re-sign Puna, re-sign Tart, draft somebody who can develop. We still took Justin last year, like Boygby. Go get another guy in free agency, build up that defensive line so that it can be great but not necessarily exceptional day one. Now, Kenneth Grant is an option in the first round. Other than that, there's not really anybody that's falling to 22 that changes the game. Same thing with edge rusher. There's nobody at 22 that changes the way that the X's and O's run to me. There's nobody in this draft that really does. I mean, top-tier edge rushers go very early for a reason, or they develop. Like, top-tier edge rushers are not necessarily just always first-round guys. They're not. Now, you have to draft them early because it is a very limited crop, but it's beside the point. Same thing with wide receiver. Wide receiver falling to me. Tet and Igbuka are both gone. There's nobody that moves the needle for me. Now, yes, tight end obviously moves the needle for me. Fan in the second round is exceptional, but I'm starting to worry that Warren and Loveland will both be gone by 22 in full transparency. And so I have a hard time believing that that's necessarily a foregone conclusion. I think you look at drafts in the past, which I've done, which we're going to look at here in just a second, and you look at 22 and later, and you look at the success rate, and it's not good. Now, I expect us to draft later than 22 next year. So if we're giving up this year and next year, what are we really giving up? Now, let's look at, I want to look at years where we've gotten the people through their the first 4 years of the contract, because the biggest argument I keep hearing is 5 years of production, 6 years of production out of a running back isn't worth it. Now, let's look at guys in the last 6 years, 2018, 2019, 2020 is what we're going to look at, 22 and later, picks 22 and later, and see who was drafted and what percentage of them you would prefer to have. Now, for me, it's about 80% of the guys I would rather give up to go get Ashton Jeanty. So let's talk about this. 2018, we had Rashawn Evans at 22 to the Titans, Isaiah Wynn to the Patriots, DJ Moore to the Panthers, Hayden Hurst to the Ravens, Calvin Ridley to the Falcons, Terrell Edmonds to the Steelers, Rashad Penny to the Seahawks, Taven Bryan to the Jags, Mike Hughes to the Vikings, Sony Michel to the Patriots, and the Ravens getting Lamar Jackson. DJ Moore and Lamar Jackson. Honestly, DJ Moore doesn't move the needle for me as much. He's right on that line. So that's two guys out of those final 11 picks that are solid, still in the league contributors, worthwhile, move the needle to where it'd be worthwhile to not have a star absolute stud of a player, especially in this scheme. Now let's look at 2019. 2019, we've got Andre Dillard to the Eagles, Titus Howard to the Texans, Josh Jacobs to the Raiders, Marquise Brown to the Ravens, Montez Sweat to the Commanders, Jonathan Abram, Jerry Tillery to us, LJ Collier to the Seahawks, DeAndre Baker to the Giants, Caleb McGarry to the Falcons, N'Keal Harry. Montez Sweat, maybe Hollywood Brownies onto a second team for a reason. Josh Jacobs also on his second team, but a stud. Are you picking up what I'm putting down here? Are you seeing what I'm trying to say? After 22, the success rate is not extremely high. After the 22nd pick in the draft, 22nd or later, is not extremely high. Now let's look at 2020. Justin Jefferson at pick 22. Justin Jefferson to the Vikings. Congrats. Good job. Then Kenneth Murray, Cesar Ruiz, Ayuk, who, again, how much of that Shanahan? I like Ayuk. I would still trade him for Jeanty. Jordan Love, Jordan Brooks, Patrick Queen, who outside of one season has been mid. Let's not get, I hope everybody knows that. Isaiah Wilson, Igbenogany, Jeff Gladney, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Best class out of the bunch. 3 or 4 guys there that are worth being upset about losing or not. Like, that's the threshold after 22. Like, there is probably pretty dang close to the same hit rate and success rate at the second round as there is at the bottom of the first. No, I don't know that. I don't know those numbers. I could start looking at second rounders too, but For me, it just comes down to plain and simple. Does the guy move the needle for your franchise or not? Jeanty immediately moves the needle for the franchise. Herbert and Jeanty is Rivers and LT. That'd be badass. Come on, dude. That'd be so electric. No pun intended. And if we look at some of the great franchises that we've had over the last few years, and we're looking across some of these years where they've picked back-to-back 22 or later in that range somewhere, you've got the Ravens in 21 and 20 taking Queen and Bateman. You think they wouldn't give up both of those for an absolute star player, for a Saquon Barkley? They would, is the short answer. The Bills, 23 and 24, Kincaid, Keon Coleman, there was a trade involved, so a third and fourth round swap. You think they wouldn't give up that for Ashton Jeanty? The Chiefs didn't have a 19 or a 21 because they traded them for difference makers. CEH in 2020. You think that moved the needle for him? Patriots, Sony Michel and N'Keal Harry in 18 and 19 when they were at the top of their game. You think that moved the needle for him? Seahawks in 19 and 20. LJ Collier and Jordan Brooks. You wouldn't trade both of them for Jeanty? The Rams, look how quickly they rebuilt without any of them first-round picks. F them picks, bro, as everybody said. Now, I'm not all the way on that, but getting a star player matters. Now, the Rams were a little bit more of a complete team. I will give them that. But they traded everything away. They traded away their entire future. And I'm not saying we go that route, but if there's ever a time to sacrifice your first-round picks, it's when your college coach has an advantage on recruiting or drafting versus anybody else because he's been there recently. He's recruited these guys. He knows them personally. We have an advantage towards drafting. I think it's a genuine reason why we drafted so well last year. It's because we have people who are just in that realm. First-round picks in this next 2 years don't matter as much to me. Star players matter. Ashton Jeanty is a star. Running back production, whatever you want to call it, doesn't last as much. You don't have too much wear and tear, yada, yada. I don't care. I care about what's going to happen over the next 6 years. Over 6 years, Justin Herbert's going to be in his early 30s. 32, 33. I think he's 26 right now. Maybe 25 still. Derwin James will be out of the league. With the way he plays, his playing style, he's likely going to be out of the league. Rashawn Slater will be on his third contract. Will have already extended Joe Alt. Khalil Mack will be in the Hall of Fame most likely. What are we talking about? 6 years of production? Why are we scoffing at what we can get for 6 years of elite play from a position? I don't get it. I don't get it. And honestly, franchise tag a running back? That's the cheapest thing you can franchise tag. That's why it happens. No, I don't like the franchise tag. I don't think it's a good thing, but it's an option. So I don't get it. The only argument I will listen to is how many running backs are going to be available that can put up a similar level of production. Now, I do believe that. I have 9 guys that I think are going to be gone by day 2. Or round 2, sorry, the end of round 2. So that's my only hesitation there, is you don't take one in the first. Who do you take in the second? Who's there at 22? Because I think a lot more guys are going to be gone by pick 22 in the second round than people are thinking. And definitely by the third round. People see running back value. They just see it on a rookie contract. They don't want to pay him because they know the wear and tear. But they want to get good ones. Yeah, I know the whole people don't take him with the first round. That comes down to the contract because it's return on investment versus what you can go get in the open field. But you can't just find stars. Bijan Robinson is a star. Saquon Barkley is a star. Derrick Henry was a star. These players don't come around that often, and you capitalize on them when you can. Now, the fall-off can be huge. The fall-off can be short. Look at Zeke Elliott. He fell off a cliff. Do you think the Cowboys regret drafting him? I sure don't. Do I think Jeanty's better than Zeke Elliott? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I don't know. That's my Ashton Jeanty thoughts. 22 in next year's first all day long to move up to 9 with the Saints. Saints need to rebuild. Hopefully, Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley relationship isn't all bad. They need to retool. They need to get younger. They need to get cheaper. They know that. We want to jump the Bears. That's what it takes. 24 and 20 or 25 and 26 first round picks. I'm all in. So let me know what you guys think. I've heard what a lot of you guys think. Y'all hate me. Or this take. You don't hate me. You hate this take. But I'm willing to hear you out. So let me know what you guys think. If you liked this video, please give me a follow on Twitter or X at Erdman Chargers, shown on the graphic here, or subscribe to my YouTube channel at Nature's Calls Pod.